Hello friends, please confirm that you can see me and hear me. Thank you. So, a quick recap of our last encounter with each other. In the last lecture, we had taken a very brief overview of the nature of Indian society. We had discussed that Indian sociologists did not simply follow the path which had already been treaded by Western sociologists, because Indian society was quite distinct from the Western society. In the West, the discipline of sociology had emerged to study the rise of modern industrial society. The Western scholars were analyzing a society which was characterized by urban population, a decline in the social significance of religion, an educated workforce, an industrial economy, right? Problems associated with urban living, etc. In contrast, Indian society, when sociology emerged, it was still very traditional. Characterized by traditional social structures like joint family, caste system, salience of religion in social life, etc. So these Western templates, Western theories were considered as somewhat inadequate to understand the very different kind of society and culture that India possessed. Also, we discussed that the most striking feature of Indian society perhaps is the unity and diversity which is present. Right? So Indian society is home to numerous pluralities, whether it is about a multiplicity of races or numerous languages, different religious affiliations, etc. So then we dealt at some length about some of these diversities. So we spoke about the different religions that are present, and within them various sects, cults, godmen, right? New age movements and whatnot. We talked about different racial types present in Indian society, such as the Indo-Aryan, the Dravidian, the Proto-Australoid or Pre-Dravidian, the Negrito, and the Mongoloid race. Then we also spoke of about hundreds of linguistic groups. Ki kos pe badle pani, char kos pe pani. Then we spoke about thousands of castes and tens of thousands of subcastes. We spoke about numerous gotras. We spoke about regional differences, and so on and so forth. Then we had mentioned in passing how this fellow, Winston Churchill, had predicted, and many others also, for that matter, had predicted that India would kind of disintegrate because of these numerous differences of identities and affiliations. However, then we went on to understand how we have withstood the test of time. Despite our distinct identities, we have managed to stay together. Right? We discussed sources of unity emanating from that geographical compactness, contiguity, and historical continuity. We are united by our, this shared innate religiosity. About there's a political unity, and that project has historical antecedents, not just the gift of the British. Since ancient times, there has been this notion of a united India under a sovereign. We discussed about how the feeling of nationalism has been infused by glorification of national heroes or national symbols through constitutional and legal provisions such as having a single constitution, single citizenship, single currency, and so on. Right? We spoke about what else? What other sources of unity did I speak about? Please help me out. Yes, how migration has strengthened that, and migration, pilgrimage, caste system, even oppression of women, symbols of national pride, collectivism, importance of the family. Absolutely. The Indian railways, modern education, all India services. Absolutely, friends. Right? So there are any number of sources of unity. Right? Shashi Tharoor, in one of his utterances, he expressed it pretty well. He says the Indian model is that of a thali, not of a khichdi. He says the Indian model is that of a thali in which you have multiple, veggies or items which are present, each with its own distinctive flavor, but each contributing to that, like together it's a very sumptuous meal. Right? What we otherwise call a salad bowl approach. In contrast to America's melting pot approach. So, with that kind of introduction to Indian society, we had begun our journey in sociology, paper 2. Today also what we begin with, friends, possibly you will not find in the standard or the suggested reading materials. Nevertheless, it will be another important introductory lecture. Today, so moving ahead, we now move on to discussing early influences on Indian sociology. Early influences on Indian sociology. As has been shared already, friends, it was in 1919 that Sir Patrick Getz established a department, the first department of sociology in India, in Bombay University. So, when sociology was established in India, it was profoundly impacted by the socio-political intellectual currents that were underway during that period. See, what is sociology? At the end of the day, very bluntly or simply put, it is a systematic, scientific analysis of society. That is what sociology boils down to. A systematic study or analysis of society. It is how we analyze our social life. That is what sociology is. So when sociology was being established as an academic discipline in the first half of the 20th century, there were already various ways in which Indian society was being analyzed. Those different streams of thought which analyzed Indian society in different ways had a bearing on the then nascent discipline of sociology. Any academic discipline, friends, particularly belonging to the social sciences, when they are being nurtured, when they are in their infancy or early years, they are bound to be profoundly influenced by the intellectual climate of the day. So was sociology in India. So let us now try to appreciate what were the early influences on Indian sociology. One very important basis for the scientific study of Indian society came from what? Any guesses? what could have contributed very significantly to and I underline the word scientific analysis of society. What do you need for that analysis to be scientific in character? You require empirical data, and large amounts of empirical data or information, statistics about Indian society had become available thanks to census operations. So please note down, first major influence that we discuss was empirical data collected through census reports, district gazetteers, village handbooks, etc. regarding the conditions prevalent in Indian society. British officials collected large amounts of empirical data about the lives of the people they were governing through the census operations. Census specifically was introduced in India in 1865. From 1865 to 1872, the first All India census was conducted. And then 1881 onwards, after every 10 years, census was conducted. And through these censuses, very large amounts of data or statistics about various aspects of the lives of the people were collected by the British officials. This data served as an important input for conducting a scientific analysis of society. Therefore, it helped immensely in the discipline of sociology. I repeat, the first major influence was the large amounts of empirical data collected by the British officials through census operations, district gazetteers, and village handbooks. Please appreciate, friends, Herbert Risley. He is a very important figure in Indian sociology and anthropology. We quote him extensively in both the disciplines, sociology and the sister discipline of anthropology. Risley, he pioneered ethnographic studies or ethnography. He pioneered ethnography, meaning detailed accounts about the lives of a particular caste or group. Risley collected information and came out with detailed descriptive accounts about the lives of a social group, what we term as ethnography. He pioneered ethnography in India. Who was this Herbert Risley? He was a member of the Indian Civil Services, the predecessor to the IAS. And he later on became the Census Commissioner. He authored a book by the name of Caste and Tribes of Bengal. Caste and Tribes of Bengal, in which he carried out ethnographic studies. Ethnographic means a detailed, systematic account of the lives of a people. Okay. His book, Caste and Tribes of Bengal, contained ethnographic studies of different social groups. So one important influence was the copious amounts of empirical data generated and gathered by the officials. I'm deliberately talking slowly so that you can alongside make notes. Second important influence was I'll make you write in a while, but first let us discuss. See, the British were at that time ruling the country. And the British, first the company officials and then those heading the government, serving the British crown, they had developed a particular view of Indian society. So they had also analyzed Indian society. Why they had analyzed Indian society? For their own colonial interests. They simply wanted to know the customs, the manners, the way of life, the social institutions of their subjects. That is why the British were also very interested in understanding Indian society. The administrators or the colonial rulers, along with the Christian missionaries who accompanied them, they also developed a particular view or analysis of Indian society. How did they see Indian society? What was, very briefly, their view? Was it appreciative or was it critical? Tell me, was the British view of Indian society, did they see this Indian society as something amazing and awesome, or did they see it as something decadent and primitive? So they developed, as most of you are rightly suggesting, the British developed a very critical view of Indian society and culture. Simply put, friends, the British officials and the Christian missionaries, they went to town, finding numerous faults with Indian society and culture. In their analysis, Indian society was deemed to be primitive, backward, stuck in a time warp, somewhat non-progressive, having numerous regressive social practices like sati or child marriage or enforced widowhood, having very oppressive social structures like caste. For any technical glitches any of you may be facing, please WhatsApp to the tech support number and do not send messages in the chat window here. So point is, friends, now why did the British develop a critical view of Indian society? Because that served their colonial interest. They developed this notion of the white man's burden, which meant what? It was a notion premised upon a sense of racial superiority. The British or the white men, the Europeans, the colonizers, they were a somewhat superior race who had come to these distant lands in Asia, Africa, or Latin America to civilize the natives. The natives, meaning us, who were primitive, who were barbaric, who were pre-modern, who were stuck in a time warp. Now we require the politico-administrative leadership, the vision, the technology, the beneficence, the large-heartedness, of the European colonizers. So since the white race was more advanced, it had a moral duty to civilize the natives, what was also termed as the civilizing mission. Christianity, the religion of Europeans, was considered as a more evolved and superior religion than the pagan religions or the pre-Christian religions prevalent in Asia or Africa. So they had come here, according to the British, they had come to the colonies not for our economic exploitation, but to kind of help us progress, show us the light of the day. And it was in that spirit that they wanted to analyze the social life of the people they were ruling. Now, they could justify their political rule in India only if the Indian society was painted all black. Therefore, they highlighted the oppressive structures and regressive social practices prevalent in Indian society. So please note down, the second influence was the critical assessment of Indian society and culture. The critical assessment of Indian society and culture developed by the colonial administrators and Christian missionaries. Developed by the colonial administrators and the Christian missionaries. So they had developed a very incisive critique of our society, highlighting its various ills. Thirdly, friends, now that the British have gone, we can see, or we can evaluate their success in hindsight. Were they successful in highlighting the numerous ills plaguing our society and culture? Do you continue to see remnants or important continuities of the British critique of Indian society today? Forget others. Tell us about how we view our society. Do we continue to view our society or many of its aspects, say pertaining to the treatment meted out to women or lower castes, as regressive? Aren't we almost apologetic? Right? Chali, moving on. Another important influence. Now, friends, another important influence on Indian sociology was the view of Indian society developed by the socio-religious reformers. How did the reformers view Indian society? Tell me, friends. The Brahmo Samaj, the Arya Samaj, the Prarthana Samaj, and the like, the Ramakrishna Mission. How did they analyze? What was their analysis of Indian society? Many of you are suggesting they were also critical of Indian society. But then, was their view of Indian society the same as the British view? No, clearly not. Yes, so the reformers, how they viewed Indian society, how they analyzed it, they acknowledged the criticism of Indian society and culture by the colonial administrators. So, quite in sync with the colonial administrators, the reformers also acknowledged certain regressive practices like sati or early marriage, parda system, and so on and so forth. However, they also significantly differed from the colonial critique. Why? Because for the reformers, these features that exist in our social life today, they are not an integral part of our culture. They are more in the nature of a corruption which has permeated our body politic. So they harped on a golden ancient past, during which time women had the right to, say, become scholars. You had a Gargi and a Maitri. Or caste or the Varna Vyavastha was based on merit and was not rigidly hereditary. So some time back in the golden past, some golden age, Indian society was more meritocratic, egalitarian, and was not as ossified, as restrictive, as oppressive as it has come to be today. So what needs to be done? They were, in terms of their analysis, they sought to kind of bring about a positive change in the society. They wanted to rid the society of those corruptions that had crept in. So they sought to do away with the sati pratha, or child marriage, or enforced widowhood, and so on and so forth. So they were not only or entirely critical. Acknowledging the shortcomings is more like it. They acknowledged the shortcomings or the social problems of the day, but wanted to kind of bring about positive changes. Based on what? How did they conclude that India had a glorious ancient past? Based on study of what? Of the scriptures. Based on scriptural study. Like Saraswati said, go back to the Vedas. Right? So based on scriptural analysis, they claimed that India, many ages ago, had this very egalitarian, meritocratic, open system, which had somehow become ossified, rigid, oppressive, regressive, down the edges. So we need to get rid of those elements. So you don't throw away the baby with the bathwater. You remove what are the undesirable elements prevalent in our society. So they sought to, in fact, counter the critique of the administrators. The administrators were saying, you guys are all bad and regressive and, irrational lot. These guys were saying, no, yes, we do have shortcomings, but they are a relatively recent phenomenon. Look at our glorious culture. Look at our engineering feats. Look at our accomplishments. So their view of Indian society as one beset with problems, but also one with a glorious past, also reflected in the writings of several sociologists. So third point, please write down if I should dictate. The social religious reformers analyzed Indian society as possessing a glorious ancient past, but beset with numerous social problems in the modern age. Full stop. Social evils such as sati, untouchability, child marriage, etc., do not have scriptural sanction, and must be weeded out through social reforms and progressive legislation. Another important influence on early sociology, friends, were the already well-developed and matured disciplines of sociology and anthropology in the West. Please note down, fourth, the well-developed disciplines of sociology and anthropology in the West also influenced early Indian sociology. How did they influence? Please appreciate, friends, as already discussed. In the West, sociology has a history almost a century prior to its establishment in India. During, say, that intervening period of 70-80 years, academically, the discipline of sociology and anthro in the West had become very rich in terms of multiple theories, concepts, tools, research methodologies, etc. While we did not blindly imitate or blindly copy, blindly use those Western concepts to study Indian society, nevertheless, they did have some influence on Indian sociology and anthropology as well. For example, friends, Marxism is a political ideology. It is also an analysis of society, of human history, which emerged in the West, in Germany and England, through the writings of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in the 19th century. Marxism influenced every branch of knowledge in the West, for sure. Whether it was history or sociology or political science or economics or philosophy, all branches of knowledge in the West were greatly influenced by Marxism. Marxism claimed universal application. So Marx claimed that his theory can explain the social reality, the social conditions in any society. Consequently, several scholars in India, influenced by Marxist writings, they sought to apply Marxism to analyze Indian society, leading to the emergence of an Indian variant or Indian branch of Marxist thought. Though it had to be modified, it was not exactly a replica or a photocopy of the Western Marxist philosophy. Nevertheless, Marxism, likewise another philosophy or another school of thought developed in Western anthropology called structural functionalism. Structural functionalism was developed by British anthropologists. Now please appreciate many Indian scholars, including prominent sociologists like Gobind Sadashiv Ghure. G.S. Ghure is widely regarded as the father of Indian sociology. Gobind Sadashiv Ghure, who is acknowledged to be the founder of Indian sociology, or M.N. Srinivas, another prominent sociologist, and scores of others. They received their academic grounding, they undertook their studies. Where? In the Western countries. So they were taught by Western scholars. They were exposed to the concepts, theories developed by Western sociologists and anthropologists. And somewhere or the other in their writings, that imprint, that impact of Western theories, etc., was also visible. Structural functionalism. So M.N. Srinivas pioneered the school of structural functionalism in India, influenced by British anthropologists. Okay, so point is, friends, we did not blindly imitate Western theories, models, or tools to study Indian society. But since many prominent sociologists and anthropologists who worked in India, studied in India, they were trained in the West. Also appreciate Indian sociology has also received important contributions from several American, German, British, and French sociologists. Numerous Western scholars have also made important contributions to Indian sociology. Given these contexts, Indian sociology was, to some extent, also influenced by the developments in Western sociology and anthropology. Another influence, friends. Take 15-20 seconds to wrap up whatever you write in, and then I proceed. I will quickly sum up the points that I have discussed till now. Okay, the important influences on early sociology in India. Firstly, were the empirical data collected by the British through census operations, the district gazetteers and the village handbooks. The British collected large amounts of data about the lives of their subjects, which will help them to rule the people better. Herbert Risley, for instance, who pioneered ethnographic studies in India. Ethnographic meaning a detailed account of the life of a social group. He wrote a book titled Caste and Tribes of Bengal, in which he discussed in detail the lifestyle of different castes, different tribal groups. So he pioneered ethnographic studies in India. He, I'm giving as an example, was a prominent civil servant who rose to become the census commissioner. Secondly, I discussed the influence of the viewpoint of the critical assessment of Indian society developed by the colonial administrators and Christian missionaries. Now they wanted to justify their colonial rule on the notion of the white man's burden. Therefore, they highlighted the various decadent aspects of Indian society. How Indian society is characterized by numerous oppressive structures and regressive practices. Thirdly, we discussed the impact of how the social religious reformers, they sought to counter the criticism of Indian society by the officials by highlighting an ancient period of glorious civilizational past, while the reformers acknowledged the social evils which need to be weeded out through progressive legislation or social reforms. They suggested that Indian society was not all regressive, but these are rather kind of corruptions which have crept into our body politic. Then we talked about the view of who? Who next? What was the next point I discussed? Yes, how the theories and models developed by Western sociology and anthropology. See, the two are sister disciplines. Okay, anthropologists study tribal groups, sociologists very kind of basic kind of a difference. Anthropologists study primitive, pre-modern tribal groups. Sociologists study modern society. So these two disciplines had already matured in the West and developed numerous theories, models, tools, concepts, and research methodologies. Many of the early sociologists in India had received their academic training in the West. They had been exposed to the Western theories and concepts. Though these were not blindly applied in Indian society, they were somewhat useful, or they did somewhere influence the development of Indian sociology. Now, what is Marxism, what is structural functionalism, and how they impacted Indian sociology, we will discuss as we proceed. Right? This is not the appropriate moment to discuss those in great detail, but we will definitely. But just to bring home the point at this juncture that the development of these two disciplines in the West also had a profound bearing on the development of the discipline in India. Moving on, another important influence on early Indian sociology were the ancient scriptures. Many Indian scholars and Western analysts of Indian society, they were of the view that if Indian society has to be understood, you need to have a thorough reading of the ancient Sanskritic scriptures. You need to have a thorough understanding of the ancient Sanskritic scriptures. These scriptures would reveal various Indian concepts. Particularly, they will help us to analyze the religious concepts of the Hindus. They will also help us to analyze how society was in olden times. So many of these scholars would study various scriptures such as the Vedas, the Upanishads, the great epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata, in quite great detail. As many of you suggesting, it is called Orientalism. Yes, you can use that word. Or simply put, friends, Indian or ancient Sanskritic scriptures were relied upon to understand Hindu religion, Hindu values, Hindu concepts. For instance, even Gobind Sadashiv Ghure greatly relied upon scriptural study. Many scholars pointed out that various Sanskritic texts, it could be scriptures like the Vedas, the Purana, or the great epics, or it could be even other texts like the Arthashastra. These gave detailed accounts of social life in India. These texts also helped us to understand various Hindu concepts. So these were greatly relied upon to analyze Indian society. Sixthly, friends, another important influence was, now why this emphasis on Hindu scriptures specifically? Why not say Buddhist scriptures or Jain scriptures or Muslim scriptures? Because demographically, India was considered to be predominantly a Hindu country or the land of the Hindus, and hence the emphasis on an analysis of Hindu scriptures. Okay. Moving on, friends. Another assessment of Indian society, which also influenced early sociologists, was the view of you tell me who or what was the predominant intellectual socio-political movement during the period of the establishment of sociology in India? What was really happening in our society? Absolutely right. It was the freedom struggle, right? So the nationalist movement, the views of the nationalist leadership, they also significantly influenced early sociology. What was the view of Indian society developed by the national leadership? Namely, Gandhi and Nehru, Patel. How did they understand or analyze Indian society? What was their assessment? You don't need to be a sociologist for this. Just an understanding of our history. You should know how the national leadership viewed Indian society. How did they analyze or view Indian society, friends? Rural-based, Gandhi envisioned a Ramarajya or a classless society, diverse, welfare state, absolutely. Point is, friends, how the national leadership analyzed Indian society. They contended that Indian society, since times immemorial, has comprised of diverse social-religious groups. And through the ages, these different identities have lived together in a spirit of peace and harmony. By and large, there is that sense of brotherhood or that shared destiny which binds and has bound all Indians through the ages. That notion of unity in diversity, that notion of a composite culture that we discussed in the last lecture, that basically informed the view of Indian society developed by the national leadership. So the Indian national leadership considered that Indian society is characterized by pluralism. So there is a plurality of social identities, cooperation and harmony, a composite culture, peaceful coexistence, secularism, syncretism. Syncretism means what? There is kind of elements, different cultural elements fused together. So Indian culture, we may be majority Hindu, but is Indian culture the same as Hindu culture? Tell me, friends. From the perspective of the nationalists, is Indian culture the same as Hindu culture? No. It is a composite culture with important contributions made by Hindus and Muslims, Buddhists, Parsis. So no matter your minuscule demographic size, different sections of Indian society have made very important contributions to the development of our composite culture. What is in the northern plains referred to as Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb. I repeat, friends, so please note down. The nationalist view of Indian society, please note down, the nationalists' view of Indian society as pluralistic, secular, tolerant, with centuries of peaceful coexistence and development of a composite culture. Also influenced the development of sociology in India. Particularly, friends, very specifically, the nationalists rejected the two-nation theory, which was what? That espoused by the Pakistan movement, that Hindus and Muslims are two separate nations. These two are very different people who cannot live together. They have different histories, different cultures, and coexistence is simply not possible. Muslim interests will be threatened in a Hindu majority India. That was the tone and tenor of the communalists, like the Muslim League or the Pakistan movement. In contrast, the national leadership developed an analysis of Indian society, which is characterized by a shared, common cultural heritage of different communities. So Hindus, according to the national narrative, the narrative developed by the nationalists, Hindus were not threatened by centuries of Muslim rule. And Muslims have nothing to fear in a Hindu majority independent India. When I say pluralistic, it means what? That there is plurality. Plural means multiple. There are multiple social groups who have contributed, who are an important integral part of Indian society. So we may be demographically majority Hindu, but that by no stretch takes away the important contributions to Indian society, Indian history, Indian culture made by Muslims or Buddhists or Jains or Sikhs. In a nutshell, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Isai, आपस में सर भाई भाई. That is the spirit of tolerance, brotherhood, irrespective of our differences. And it's not a recent thing. We have always been like that. That is what the nationalists suggested. It is only the British who are now trying to divide us along communal lines, pit Muslims against Hindus, or the untouchables against the higher castes. So by and large, nationalists sought to emphasize on the pluralistic, secular character of Indian society. Their emphasis was on maintaining national integration. That all these different people, what Winston Churchill was threatening, that these different people will literally fall apart. The nationalists wanted to prevent that. So they wanted to develop a sense of nationalism, of being one among these diverse identities. Please appreciate, friends, the father of Indian sociology, Kure, was a very committed nationalist. He was very concerned throughout his writings. He had a very illustrious career, spanning more than 3 decades. Throughout his career, he was very concerned with maintaining the integrity, the unity of India. Right? So these were some of the early influences on Indian sociology. Of course, you can also mention the kind of outlook which was fostered by modern education. Modern education, introduced by the British, had fostered a scientific temperament, a rational attitude. That also facilitated a scientific analysis of social life, or what we call as sociology. Yes, you can mention it as the seventh point. It is somewhere, modern education influenced the national leadership also. Modern education influenced the social religious reformers also. Right? So it somehow kind of, it was already there in their viewpoint. But modern education as such, I'm just making explicit. It promoted rational outlook and a scientific temperament, which facilitated the development of an objective analysis of society. In 1919, friends, the Department of Sociology was established in Bombay University by Gates. Soon after, within 5-6 years, Gure took over the mantle from Gates. So he became the head of Department of Sociology in Bombay University. And it was under him that the discipline of sociology in India flourished. Okay. Chaliye. With that, we are done with understanding the early influences on Indian sociology. Gure took over the mantle from Gates somewhere in 1920s. Okay. Moving on, let us now try to analyze what is popularly regarded as the most distinctive social institution present in our society. Which one are we talking about? Clearly, friends, it is caste. Family is present in so many other societies, almost all societies everywhere. But caste you find present only in Indian society. So caste is a social institution which is regarded very popularly as uniquely Indian. Okay, so now we have begun discussing the first of the major social institutions, beginning our analysis with caste. So, what do you understand by the term caste? We will get into the academic understanding of it. But what is your understanding of caste? What is caste to you? What does caste mean to you? It is birth-based. It implies occupation, division, social stratification, division based on birth, varna plus hierarchy, profession, a social identity given at birth. Is that all about caste? Even my religion is given to me at birth. It is inherited. Group of people having the same work. Social status, identity by birth. It's a social stratification. In the modern context, we use terms like general, OBC, SC, and ST. No mobility. Innate nature. Group of people with similar ideology. That's not very satisfactory kind of a way of putting it. It's a social stratification system. It's an exploitative system. Very importantly, it's an exploitative system. It involves segregation. It is a social evil. Now there you're passing a social value judgment. Let's try to avoid that. Endogamy is practiced. Classification in society in groups based on religion and practices. Identity assigned to a group of people based on their birth. It divides and discriminates citizens. It is characterized by endogamy. Has dominant role in relationships. Varna with restrictions. Oppressive hierarchy. You can't marry outside your caste. It reduces unity amongst the Hindus. Status. Similar customs and traditions. It brings biases, collectivism, questions dignity. Caste is a mentality. It further divides people divided over religion. So one thing we are divided along our religious lines, and then we are further divided within a religion along caste lines. It is outdated. Caste means untouchability. It denotes a lineage, common status group. Chali, thank you. It means restrictions. It has political implications. It is a corrupt element in our society. It is regressive. It is the social norm. Chali, thank you for your inputs. So friends, yes, caste is much of what all you have suggested. What is the Hindi word for caste? Pardon me because I do not know other languages. So let there be that some... The Hindi word for caste would be jati. Huh? Right. And it is the same in Tamil. Okay, that is a new thing that I have realized today. That I have got to know today. In Malayalam too, it is jati. Okay, that is such a revelation, friends. In Kannada too, it is jati. See, that is the beauty of being in a class of people from diverse backgrounds. See, in this manner also, caste binds us. Simply by the same term, even in Telugu. Kullam or jati in Telugu. Same in Punjabi, in Bengali. Right? So jati is like, now that is honestly a revelation. I did not know this prior to your feedback. Great. In Marathi also. In Urdu, it may be referred to as Zaat, which is quite similar. Great. Chali. So the Indic word, should I say, not a Hindi word, the Indic word for caste would be jati. Yeah, in many Indian languages. Now, then where does this word caste come from? Caste is clearly not from any of the Indian languages. The word caste, friends, has origins in Portuguese. In Himachali also it is jati. It has origins in Portuguese. So the Portuguese were one of the early Europeans who encountered the Indian people and the social divisions that they witnessed, they use the term caste for that. Okay. In fact, there's a Portuguese word casta, from which the English word caste is derived. Please note down. Now friends, before you note down, let me just elaborate a bit more. Caste is considered as a type of stratification system. It is a type of stratification system. What we mean by stratification? Stratification roughly or broadly means a system of inequality or a hierarchical arrangement of social groups. The word stratification implies a hierarchical arrangement of social groups. I'm just introducing you to some sociological terminology here, very basic terminology. Whenever we can place social groups in a hierarchical order, we can term it as a stratification system. For example, if you divide the society into classes, in terms of wealth, people can be classified as upper class, middle class, and lower class. That is an example of a stratification system. Feminist sociologists contend that in general, men lord over women. So gender can also be considered as a stratification system. Or a system of structured inequality, wherein social groups are hierarchically arranged. Right? Likewise, the caste system is considered a uniquely Indian type of stratification system. Why? Because middle class, upper class, lower class, rich, poor, you have in every country, in every society. But Banyas and Jats and Gujars and Lohars and Chamars and Sunars and Brahmins and Rajputs, you have only and only in Indian society. Right? So jatis or castes are present uniquely in Indian society. So please write down. Caste is a system of social stratification which is considered as uniquely present in Indian society. Caste is a system of social stratification which is considered as uniquely present in Indian society. The word caste, after full stop, the word caste comes from the Portuguese word casta, which means lineage. Which means lineage. Lineage meaning what? Who is a child of who? Right? Your parentage and your ancestors, that's the lineage to which you belong. Okay? You belong to the lineage of your father, your grandfather, your great-grandfather. That is lineage. So why am I a Banya? My caste, friends, is Banya. Okay? That's my caste. Why is my caste Banya? Any guesses? From where did I get this caste? It is because my father's caste is Banya. And why was my father's caste Banya? Because his father's caste was Banya. And because his father's caste was Banya, and so on. So I belong to a line of Banyas, and hence I am a Banya. Likewise, you belong to whichever caste you do, because you belong to a lineage of that caste. The word casta, please write down, the word casta derives from the Latin term castus. Derives from the Latin term castus, which means pure. So many of you were suggesting, what about the mother's caste? Does that not matter? Tell me, friends, you take the example of any member of caste society. What is my mother's caste? If I am Banya and my father is a Banya, what is the caste of the mother? She is also Banya. Therefore, I am a pure Banya, right? Undiluted. So my father was also the son of a Banya, married to another Banya. He was a pure Banya, and so on and so forth. So purity of blood, purity of descent is maintained through marrying within one's own caste. So please note that the term casta derives from the Latin term castus, meaning pure. Full stop. There is no consensus among scholars. There is no consensus among scholars regarding a single definition of caste. Regarding a single definition of caste. Full stop. However, some of its main features are: first, ascribed status. Ascribed status. In sociology, friends, there are two terms which are commonly used in sociological literature. One is what we call ascribed status. The other is what is called achieved status. What do they mean? Ascribed status means a social position which an individual occupies by birth, or something over which he has no control. Achieved status, on the other hand, means a status which is occupied by one's achievement, so through one's effort. For example, the race to which I belong is which kind of status? A racial identity is an ascribed status. So I'm either born in the Caucasian race, or the Mongoloid race, or the Dravidian race, or the Aryan race, right? It is simply by the birth of accident. Gender, it is which type of status? Ascribed status. ascribed status. So did I strive to become a Baniya? No, I was simply born a Baniya by the accident of birth. Class, in contrast, in modern industrial society, is considered an achieved status. Or one's occupation in modern industrial society is considered an achieved status. Okay? So first point you write, ascribed status, dash. In caste society, every person's caste, in caste society, every person's caste is determined by and at birth. Second, prohibition on mobility. Prohibition on mobility. Tell me, friends, can a person, a member of the caste society, change his caste? Can I become a Brahmin if I read up a lot, become Vidwan, highly intelligent, very well read? Can I change my caste? One cannot change his or her caste. I am born a Baniya and I will die a Baniya. So my caste identity stays with me throughout my life. Mobility means what? That people moving across strata. In class society, mobility is possible. Mobility is provided for. If you are born lower class, meaning if you are born poor, can you become middle class? If you are born poor, can you become middle class? Yes, you can. Through education, hard work, enterprise, honing your talents and skills, innovation. Class society or modern industrial society provides various avenues to change one's class position, or it facilitates mobility. Class society facilitates mobility. But caste society prohibits mobility. Mobility matlab it does not permit an individual to change his or her caste. Right? Please note down. A member of caste society is not permitted to change his or her caste. Every member is born in a particular caste group. Spends his entire life as a member of that caste. And dies with the same caste identity. Society strictly prohibits and provides no mechanism to acquire a new caste. Full stop. The only way to become a member of a caste group is by how? How can I become a member of a caste group? Absolutely. Is by being born into it. Thirdly, occupational specification and rigidity. Please appreciate, friends. I'll dictate, but please appreciate first that oftentimes caste names are occupational categories. In other words, the title or the nomenclature of a caste reflects its traditional caste occupation. Can you name some castes which also reflects their traditional caste occupation? There are any number. Lohar, Sunar. Lohar means iron, whatever, right? Iron smith. Sunar means goldsmith. Okay. Chamar means somebody who works with chamda or leather. So many. Mahajan, Vellar are in Tamil, farmers. Telis, those who are oil pressers, those who make tail or oil. Nai is a caste. Nai also means barber. So, Kumhar, so many. Badai, absolutely, friends. So, caste nomenclature or title is also the indicator of the occupational persuasion of that social group. Please note that. And of course, you people have suggested so many other caste names which I have not articulated. But yes, I completely agree with you that most caste names reflect their traditional occupation. Please note down. Every caste is associated with a particular occupation. Every full stop. Every member of that caste. Every member of that caste performs the same caste occupation. And how will I know how to perform the occupation? Who will teach me? If I am born a sonar, who will teach me sonari? If I am born in the goldsmith caste, who will teach me goldsmithing? It is through the family line. Please write down. Sons acquire the skills required to perform one's caste occupation from their father. Okay. You can give just a couple of examples how different caste nomenclatures reflect their occupation. Dhobi, Nai, Badhai, Sonar, Kumar. Kumar means potter, Sonar means goldsmith, Badhai means carpenter. These are also castes. Okay. Dhobi means washerman, Nai means barber, etc. Next. Endogamy. Friends, just a slight food for thought. Do these features also exist today? Or are they the features which existed in the classic template or form? Particularly this one. Do we all pursue our traditional caste occupation today? So clearly not. What about this one? Ascribed status, that it is acquired by birth. This remains to be the case even today. Point is, friends, what we are discussing, they are, we are developing a prototype or a model of the caste system, right? We are mentioning its features and as in conventionally which existed. Many of these features may have gone down today, may have been discredited, may have undergone changes due to modernization. So, for example, you guys are striving to become civil servants irrespective of your caste. You come from different caste backgrounds. So, some may belong to farmer caste, some may belong to pandit caste, some may belong to goldsmith caste or weaver caste or ironsmith caste. Yet, numerous castes are today pursuing civil services as a career. So, clearly, the caste occupation linkage has been significantly severed, right? To what extent we'll discuss as we proceed, but point is, significant changes are taking place in the caste system as we speak. What we are discussing are the classic elements or the characteristic features of the caste system. Okay. Then come to endogamy. Endogamy means what? See, endo plus gamy. The word gamy indicates marriage. It is a suffix indicating marriage. You have many words like monogamy, marrying one person, polygamy, marrying one person, marrying multiple, right? Endogamy or exogamy. Endogamy means endo means within. So marriage within a group is known as endogamy. So whichever caste you belong to, are you all aware of your own caste? Firstly, friends, tell me. Now that we have come to marriage, it is important. You may not know what to do with it, but most of you seem to be quite aware of your own caste, right? You don't have to share it with me. So, whom are you supposed to marry? Whom will you marry? Another person of the same caste or different caste? No, it does not depend on something. You will marry another person of the same caste. No, it does not depend on bonding or love shove. Okay, these are foreign concepts. You will marry a member of the same caste. You can't even say you don't know. You know, I know, for sure. So can you guess what is the caste of my spouse? My caste is Bania. And my parents' caste is also Bania and Bania. My wife is also Bania. Right? And this is after studying so much about caste and teaching against caste, teaching Ambedkarite thought and whatever. Having strongly internalized it also. Yet one marries within the same caste. So please write down. And many scholars of caste consider that it is endogamy which is the essence of the caste system. It is endogamy, Ambedkar included. It is endogamy which is ensuring the continued existence of the caste system. It is because of endogamy that caste continues to exist and inform social life in India. In this modern, or should we call it an ultra-modern age. Please write down endogamy, dash. Every member of caste society must marry another person of the same caste. Every member of caste society must marry another person of the same caste. There was in lighter vein, just sharing with you, there was some gay rights activist, okay, who had publicly come out and he was sharing his ordeal and his struggle with his sexuality. And so his mother apparently she gave out a newspaper ishtihar, an advertisement for seeking a spouse. The person was a male, so she sought a husband for him. And in that advertisement, like many modern day, heterosexual matchmaking advertisements specify, she also specified that preferably belonging to the same caste, okay, Iyer or Iyengar, some such caste. In the lighter vein, in the sense, just highlighting that we may be willing to accept same-sex marriages, but we will not be willing to accept inter-caste marriages. Okay? That is how strongly ingrained is this system of endogamy in our minds and our social system. Okay? You don't need to mention that in the point. It was just in a lighter vein to drive home the point how entrenched is endogamy. Chali, on that note, we take a break and then we reconvene. Thank you. Now, if we are on the point of marriage, please appreciate, please appreciate that, I'm being asked what is wrong with intercaste marriage. From the perspective of the caste system, everything is wrong with intercaste marriage. Everything in the sense, it is intercaste marriage. And a person no less than Ambedkar contended that intercaste marriage has the potential to destroy the caste system. If you want to maintain the caste system, it is imperative that every person in caste society marries another person from the same caste. Why do I have a strong affinity towards members of my own caste, towards Banyas? Because my whole social world is comprised of Banyas. It is this marrying within the caste that ensures that generation after generation, a very strong sense of affiliation towards one's own caste is maintained. So caste system operates on the principle of maintaining purity of blood. Therefore, it strictly prohibits any sort of intermixing between members of different castes. And hence, the rule of endogamy, meaning caste endogamy, meaning that one must marry within one's own caste, is kind of considered as one of the defining characteristics of the caste system. And yes, intercaste marriages are taking place nowadays. To what extent and to what effect, we will discuss later on. For now, we are discussing, I acknowledge clearly that changes are taking place in the caste system. But what we are concerned with for now is the classic features of the caste system which were associated with it traditionally. Okay, we will discuss the changes as we move ahead. Also, friends, talking about marriage. So caste endogamy was the rule. However, there were two other types of marriages which did take place. So while caste endogamy was strongly prescribed, there were variations in marriage practice in actual social life. There were two types of marriages which took place, which did not conform to the rule of caste endogamy, namely Anulom marriages and Pratilom marriages. Anulom and Pratilom. What do these mean? Anulom means that a boy or the man is of higher caste marrying a woman of a lower caste. Pratilom, on the other hand, meant man of a lower caste marries woman of a higher caste. So the rule or the norm was endogamy, meaning marrying man and woman of the same caste status. Okay, so same caste. They are entering into a union. That was the norm. But then there could be two variations which did take place, Anulom and Pratilom. Sociologically speaking, these are also kind of referred to as hypergamy and hypogamy. Anulom is also known as hypergamy and Pratilom as hypogamy. Hypergamy meaning man of higher social status marrying a woman of a lower social status. Hypogamy the opposite. One of these, okay, between Anulom and Pratilom, and you will tell me the answer, one of these was very strictly penalized and punished. The other was relatively tolerated. Which of these was very strictly penalized or punished? Clearly, Pratilom was very severely condemned by the society, inviting very strong sanctions or punishments. While Anulom was still tolerated. Reason being patriarchy. So, meaning male dominance in society. So, man of a higher caste could sexually access women of lower caste through Anulom marriages. While if a lower caste man sexually accesses or marries woman of a higher caste, it was seen as an insult to the men of the higher castes. So, there is a combination of patriarchy and caste discrimination which results in relative tolerance of Anulom while a strict penal action in case of Pratilom marriages. And while Anulom was tolerated, please appreciate it did not mean that it was encouraged or preferred. It was only tolerated. The norm was clearly caste endogamy or marrying between man and woman of similar or same caste or similar social status. What is in sociology called isogamy. So, caste endogamy was the norm while Anulom and Pratilom were exceptions. Yes, the word is isogamy. Okay, for marriage between those of near equal social status. Chali. So some of you were suggesting that marriage could be a source of improving one's caste rank. No, it was not. It was the norm was to marry within one's own caste. So one could not improve one's caste position by marrying into a higher caste. Next important characteristic, of course, hierarchy. I repeat, friends, isogamy here means marriage between a man and a woman of near equal social status. So in caste system, since man and woman as a norm belong to the same caste, so it is considered as an isogamous union. Isogamy in contrast to hypergamy and hypogamy, which means the man and the woman have different social status. I hope that is clear. Isogamy means marriage between equals. Endogamy means marrying within a social group. Okay. According to Manusmriti, okay, or the laws of Manu, a child born of an intercaste union was relegated to a lower social position, and this is what resulted in the proliferation of castes. Particularly, if a Shudra man impregnated a Brahmin woman, the child born of such unions was considered a Chandal or relegated to an even lower social rank. Moving on, hierarchy. So clearly, friends, the caste system entails a hierarchical ordering of social groups. Meaning, castes are necessarily arranged in a vertical order. No two castes can be equal to each other. They are necessarily one above or one below another caste in the hierarchy. Okay? So it cannot be something like Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. it is necessarily Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. This is what we mean by hierarchy. Please note down. Hierarchy. Dash. No two castes are equal. No two castes are equal. In every part of the country, no two castes are equal. Full stop. In every part of the country, there is a highest caste. There is a highest caste, comma, a lowest caste, and several castes between them. And several castes between them. Each of which is one above and one below another caste. Each of which is one above and one below another caste. Simply meaning what? That there is a topmost caste, there is a bottommost caste, and here you will have several castes. So say there is this caste, it will be below one caste, and it will be above one caste. So no two castes are equal. There is a highest caste, a lowest caste, and several castes between them, each of which is one above and one below another caste. Now friends, you tell me, this caste hierarchy, it is a hierarchy of what? It is a hierarchy of what? When we say that the Brahmin is superior to the Rajput, who is superior to the Banya, who is superior to the Jat, who is superior to the Dhobi, he is superior in terms of what? Do we mean they have more money? Is it a hierarchy of wealth? Yes, they are relatively superior, but in terms of what? Not even intelligence, sorry. No, not necessarily occupation, yet they do follow different occupations. It is a hierarchy of ritual rank or ritual purity. So the Brahmins are purer than the Rajput, who is purer than the Banya, than the Jat, than the Dhobi. With due respect to all castes and communities, with that caveat. Okay, I'm using these as examples, so pardon me if it hurts. Or let me put it A, B, C, D, E, rather than naming caste groups, right? So it is a hierarchy of ritual purity or ritual status. Next. So in other words, friends, Brahmins or the topmost caste would have greater social prestige or social honor. They are considered as ritually purer than those below them. Next, characteristic of the caste system. What does ritual purity mean? Means they are purer in terms of, ritual salience. So the topmost caste, they would have closer access to the deity. They could chant mantras. They could make offerings to the deity. Those below them were possibly prohibited from some of those aspects while being permitted others. Those at the bottom of the ritual hierarchy ladder would be prohibited from most ritual kind of privileges. And where are these hierarchies mentioned? They are mentioned in various Hindu laws or the Dharma Shastras. Right? Chali, moving on. The next feature is restrictions on feeding and social intercourse. Restrictions on feeding and social intercourse. So friends, in the caste system, whom feeding or exchange of food and water is governed by very detailed provisions. There are clear guidelines laid down regarding members of which caste can accept food or water from members of which another caste. Social intercourse here refers to intermingling, social interactions. So there are very detailed and clear guidelines governing relationships between castes. For example, friends, there are two types of rules, what are referred to as roti vyavahar and beti vyavahar. Roti vyavahar, vyavahar literally meaning behavior or conduct. Roti meaning bread for those who do not understand Hindi. Beti referring to daughter. In other words, friends, there are clear and detailed guidelines laid down governing the exchange of food and daughters. Exchange of daughters. Regarding the exchange of food or food and water or roti vyavahar, very elaborate guidelines have been laid down. With which caste can one eat together? From which caste can one accept food and in which kind of utensils? Which kind or type of food can be accepted? So food was classified into kacha khana and pakka khana. Kacha food and pakka food. Pakka food meant that which had been processed in ghee or oil. That which had been cooked in ghee or oil. That was pakka food. Kacha food meant that which had been cooked in a medium like water. So which type of food one could accept from much lower castes? Or let me rephrase the question. Which type of food one should accept only from nearby castes? Kacha food or pakka food? Only from nearby castes, not those which are very low. Most of you have got it wrong. Kacha food was to be accepted only from the nearby castes. Pakka food, on the other hand, could be accepted from even castes which are somewhat lower down than one's own in the hierarchy. So kacha food could be accepted only from one's own caste or those above, or those which are nearby, slightly lower. But pakka food should be accepted only from, but pakka food could be accepted even from castes which are significantly lower than one's own. Why? Because the act of being processed, being cooked in ghee or butter, that itself was considered as a purifying mechanism. Okay, so say this is the caste hierarchy. So A will accept from E, or E is too far away, say from D. A may accept pakka food, but will not accept kacha food. From B, he may accept even kacha food. He will definitely accept pakka food, and he may even accept kacha food from B. Reason being, so say D has greater ritual impurity. Now impurity can be transmitted, please appreciate, and that is why there is this whole notion of untouchability. So ritual impurity, so his impurity can defile or make A impure, who belongs to a higher ritual purity status. But if the food that he is accepting from D is pakka, meaning it has been cooked in oil, so his impurities will somehow, not reach him. That is the rationale if there is any. Point is, friends, we don't need to understand the rules, the details of the rules as such. But point is, very detailed and clear guidelines were laid down regarding the exchange of food and water. What kind of food and in which utensils? So different types of utensils. So if you are accepting water in a earthen pot, mitti ka bartan, you could accept it from certain caste. If you were accepting water in a steel or what you call a pital, bronze, or a such kind of an element or a copper utensil, you could accept it from certain other castes. Why? Different utensils had different levels of permeability in terms of the ritual impurity. Suffice it to say, friends, for our purposes, there were clear and detailed guidelines laid down regarding the exchange of food and water, and also regarding social intercourse. Social intercourse meaning whom you can be friends with, whom you can interact with, whom you can give your daughters to in marriage or accept daughters from as daughters-in-law. Okay? And if the rules are violated, then what happens? If rules are not followed, then what follows? Punishments, penal action was also prescribed and implemented. Punishments could be in the form of social boycott, or offering a feast to the community, or various other mechanisms. Nextly, friends, is being ostracized. Next feature of the caste system, civil and religious. Civil and religious. Okay, before I move to the next one, let me quickly dictate on this thing. Restrictions on the last point, which is restrictions on feeding and social intercourse. Dash. Please write down. Restrictions on feeding and social intercourse. Detailed and clear guidelines were laid down. Detailed and clear guidelines were laid down governing the exchange of food. Or water. In brackets, write roti vyavhar, bracket close. As well as for regulating social interaction. Between members of the caste society. Full stop. For violation of the rules, punishments were meted out. For violation of the social rules, punishments were meted out. In varying degrees. Next point. Civil and religious disabilities and privileges. Civil and religious disabilities and privileges of different sections. For example, friends, what do we mean by civil and religious disabilities and privileges? Simply, on certain sections there were disabilities which were imposed. These disabilities were of two types: civil disabilities and religious disabilities. For other sections of the society, they enjoyed certain privileges named of two types: civil privileges and religious privileges. For instance, the lower castes, specifically the untouchable castes, on them were imposed several civil and religious disabilities. Religious disabilities would be in the nature of being denied entry into the temple. That would be a religious disability. Civil disabilities would mean being denied, say, access to the village well, or being forced into certain menial and lowly occupations. Similarly, you could see that the Brahmins enjoyed certain civil and religious privileges. religious privilege in the sense they alone could go near to the deity or become priests. Menial occupations means lowly occupations, those that are degrading. Brahmins enjoyed certain civil and religious privileges. A religious privilege could be, for instance, that only a Brahmin could officiate as a priest. Civil privileges would be in the sense, for instance, if the Brahmin commits a crime, the punishment would be lower than if the same crime is committed by an untouchable caste person. Or that they alone could impart education, become teachers. So, with different sections of the society, certain civil and religious disabilities and privileges were associated. These are some of the basic kind of commonly understood or accepted features of the or characteristics of the classic caste system. Many of them have undergone significant changes today. What those changes are, to what extent has life changed in the context of caste, we will discuss as we proceed. We began today's lecture by understanding how there is no commonly accepted definition of caste. Scholars greatly differ, right? But there are certain commonly accepted main characteristics of the caste system. Having said that, we end today's lecture by noting down some common or some popular scholarly definitions of caste. Other scholars may or may not agree with these definitions. Nonetheless, from the UPSC sociology paper point of view, these may come in handy. So please note down some scholarly definitions of caste. Beginning with S.C. Dubey. For Dubey, Jati is an endogamous unit. Jati is an endogamous unit with a more or less defined ritual status. With a more or less defined ritual status. And some occupation traditionally linked to it. And some occupation traditionally linked to it. Next, according to Andre Bete, caste is a small unnamed group. Caste is a small unnamed group of persons characterized by, I repeat, according to Bete, caste is a small unnamed group of persons characterized by endogamy, hereditary membership, and a specific style of life, which sometimes includes pursuit by tradition of a particular occupation, and usually associated with a distinct ritual status, in a hierarchical system. I repeat, Andre Bete's rather longish definition of caste. Caste is a small and named group of persons characterized by endogamy, hereditary membership, and a specific style of life, which sometimes includes pursuit by tradition of a particular occupation, and usually associated with a distinct ritual status in a hierarchical system. According to Surajit Sinha, caste is a hierarchy of endogamous groups. Organized in a characteristic hereditary division of labor. Division of labor here simply means occupation. Organized in a characteristic hereditary division of labor. For Cooley, C.H. Cooley, when a class is somewhat strictly hereditary, we may call it a caste. Okay, so these are some scholarly definitions. The good news is you do not need to remember all of them. You can use any one of them. Okay, so remember any one of them and you may use it in your answers. Cooley's definition is somewhat very, seems incomplete. It doesn't do justice. So Bete's or Dubey's or Sinha seems very easy to remember and reasonably comprehensive. I repeat, according to C.H. Cooley, when a class is somewhat hereditary, when a class is somewhat strictly hereditary, we may call it a caste. I repeat for Cooley, when a class is somewhat strictly hereditary, we may call it a caste. Okay? So Cooley's is not very comprehensive, otherwise Bete's is quite comprehensive. Even Dubé. So whichever, take your pick, but you do not definitely don't need to remember all of them, right? And also, friends, now that we have begun with the caste system, what you can do is you can begin reading it from the suggested sources. So if you pick up this book, what do you call it? Essential Sociology, read the topic. There's a chapter on caste system. You can read its introduction, and then you simply skip to the features of the caste system. Okay? Don't move ahead of the caste. We will be covering caste in several lectures as we proceed. Okay? So you don't read ahead of the caste. It will not be easy to understand from the book. So thank you, and tomorrow we move ahead and see where caste takes us. Do you think caste is holding us back as a society? Just a quick poll. Then why don't we junk caste? All of you are in unison suggesting it is holding us back. We will not junk caste, friends. It is entrenched. Chaliye. Thank you. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद बेटा. Thank you, friends.
आप सभी से विनम्र निवेदन है अपने परिवार एवं साथियों सहित भारी संख्या में पहुंचकर उनके
Yeah.